So 274, here we come, doing a bunch of rate, time, distance problems with tables and such. So we'll hit you up with answers, and then if you need help for some details, let's layer that in. So 7 has a whole number answer that would be appropriate for this question. Answer to 7 is 7. 8 is a whole number bigger than 8. Smaller than 16.
12.
It is 12. 9, we're going to get somebody in the 40s and somebody's in the 50s. It is 46, 58. 10, we're in the, it's higher than that. It's faster trains, but not by a ton. Anybody 10 with some faster trains than 9? One of them's a Pittsburgh number.
66.
66.
And 80.
And 80, all both true. 11 is a single digit number. It is 9. 12's our first fraction or decimal or mixed number of the day. Anybody have a fraction, decimal, mixed number kind of thing?
5.
Close. 5/6 is close. Anybody have something close to 5/6 on 12? Colder. We'll just let that one hang.
4/7.
Colder. 13 is a whole number. 2. 14 is a whole number. Maybe 14 whole number?
I did not get a whole number.
No.
5.
Lower than 5.
3.
3 is right. Skip a few. 21, we got some car speeds. They're kind of like 9 and 10 had some answers that were like 40s, 50s, 60s, 80s, stuff like that. We're back to stuff like that in 21. They're both whole numbers.
50 and 75.
It is 50 and 75. 22 has the fastest stuff of all. One goes over 100.
The 129.
120 and 90 are both true. So the only one that stuck us is 12. 12, our best contender was 5/6, and I shot that down. Repeats first, anything? Table making, equation solving, things that stuck you?
11.
11. Did you have for your rates and 15 plus x and a 15 minus x?
Yes.
Okay. Did the 15 plus x pair up with the 140?
Yeah.
Okay. 15 minus x paired up with 35?
Yeah.
You'd get like 2 fractions that would have stuff like that, and you look to cross multiply?
Okay.
Are you on new ground?
Yeah.
Or you had all that? Okay. So that's enough to get you going?
Yeah.
All right. One thing you want to make sure you do, if you have an error, you could always skim for this. Make sure that the higher rate also has the
Less time.
less time is true, but a lot of the problems are same time problems. So if we go rates, distances in a row, the higher rate will have to have more distance, and the lower rate has to cover less distance. If you ever get something crisscrossed, that's probably going to take you to maybe a negative answer, or something for sure weird is going to happen. Just make sure your faster rate always buddies up with your bigger distance. Somebody out of the box stole my better calculators, so if any of you have my better calculator, no harm, no foul, just bring that back sometime. But there's one like probably $20 calculator out of that box that's gone. The rest of those are like $5 calculators.
Is 12 6/5?
12 is 6/5. Yeah, 12 we could go 6/5. I'd rather go 1.2. I'd probably rather go 1 1/5. But mathematically true is 6/5. On a quiz, if it's like a time kind of thing or a word problem kind of thing, if you put 6/5, I'd probably take no points and just write in red fixed. But 1 1/5, 1.2, that would be our optimal answers on 12. Other stuff, yeah.
So once I cross multiply, what do
Then you try to get you should have a couple R's to get to a side. And you'd have a couple
so
numbers.
is it like, it's not, whenever I cross multiply, it's not a fraction?
It won't be anymore, no. You'd have, which number were you talking?
11.
11, so your 15
Yeah,
minus X would distribute like the 140, I think. You have a 15 minus X distributing
140.
a 140, and that would equal.
Yeah, no, I'm good now.
Okay. Anybody else stuck? Stuck. Anybody stuck? Can I help you make tables? Can I help you get from the table to the cross multiply problem? Do you need help to solve to the finish line? Anything that you ran into difficulties with, or transportation?
Let me start with 14.
14. So we would go rate, one of the rates is 3, one of the rates is 2. Do you have that?
No.
Okay. So rates, we'd want to go 3 for one, 2 for the other. Do you see where I'm pulling those for 14?
Yeah.
Okay. For the time is the tricky thing on 14. The time, 2.5 is the total time. So what you'd have to do, let's get an opinion from someone other than me. On 14, since 2.5 is the total time, what are you going to put in your time boxes?
You can do like that. 2.5 minus t.
Yeah, and one of them, and the other one,
T.
straight up t. Yeah, one of the boxes would just be a t, it doesn't matter which one. The other box, you would do a 2.5 minus t for the like leftover time if you subtracted that.
Alright.
Is that enough to get you going?
Yeah.
Anybody else troubleshooting, figure out where you went wrong?
21.
21. Did you go for your rates, like an x plus 25 versus an x?
Yeah.
Do you have the x plus 25 partnered with the 450?
Yeah.
And then the x with the 300?
Yeah.
And then you'd set up some fraction stuff,
And then it's just cross.
and then you cross multiply and attack. Is that good enough?
Yeah.
Anybody else, anything from 274? It's a good page for Cheswick. Why is that a good page for Cheswick?
I mean, I ain't gonna lie, half is already given to you.
274. What's the connection to Cheswick numbers? Everybody?
Is that address?
No?
Okay.
Warm? 274. You guys live in an alternate reality than I did.
724 is like.
724 is Western Pennsylvania, 274.
Is like Chesapeake.
That's Cheswick. All the Cheswick phone numbers are 274s, but you guys live in a land of cell phones.
Not wrong.
Highlands used to have all 224, 226. All the Highlands, everybody's phone number was 224, 226. New Ken, 335.
I just couldn't
Then
see.
they got 337s and 339s. But now everybody has a cell number, and your numbers are all just like random.
Yeah.
Like 980s and like weird stuff that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Last call.
Yeah, the only number really now that still matters is like 412.
412 or 724, and that's like a 50-50 split. Although some people have cell numbers, like Emily's, it's like a 215 if I have my calendar.
That's good. Like, isn't that like Philly?
It's like Philly. She got like a Philly cell phone number. That's all. Life is weird. Nothing else, homework. If it's done, send it down. If you have other good stuff, send it down. We're into 6-8 for a type of lesson that I'll always try to sell, I think is a good thing. But sometimes I don't know why it's a bad thing. So here's what's going on today is there's a million letters. You're going to do the same process we've been doing, but your answer will still have a million letters. this book calls these formulas. Sometimes these are called literal equations, sometimes these are called other things, but it's basically doing the math process without having to do the numbers math. So, personal opinion, I feel like this should be better, because how many times in your life have you been doing something and you're like, duh, I added wrong. You know, a couple minutes ago, you're like, duh, I forgot to divide, how to divide. You know, there are times where you're like, uh-oh, two negatives made a positive, I messed up the signs. There are no signs, there are no numbers, there is no math to mess up. If you understand the process, all you have to do is deal with the process. But for some reason, for high school people, sometimes there's this like psychological hurdle of, there's too many letters, I can't do it. So I'll just try to, I guess, encourage you, take a breath. There's a lot of letters, so what? All that means is you don't have to do any numbers-based math. You're not going to have to add, subtract, multiply, or divide anybody. If you can get over that psychological hurdle, this should be easier to do accurately because there's no math to be done. You just have to deal with the fact the answer is like A plus B, all divided by C. That's where we are, board full of letters. We'll see what we can do. So for a couple days, we've been solving an equation that has fractions in them. If there's two fractions, there's a best way to solve that. You don't need a whole big method. What's the best way to solve when there's just two lonely fractions? Cross multiply. So if you cross multiply here, A gets with D equal sign, while C gets with B. So that would be our first move, is just cross multiply so those friends get friended up. Your goal here in this one, because I said so, is get the C alone. So if we want to go get the C alone, what process do you have to do with the B? You have to divide, because we're always doing the opposite, and when they're side-by-side friends, they're trying to multiply. So my board's multiplying, you're dividing. So if you divide by B, what will that look like? AB on top of B. Question about hit number 1. I'll try again to sell you on this. If these were actually numbers, you would have had to actually multiply those, and maybe you could have messed it up. If this were a number, you would have actually had to divide by that, and maybe you'd mess it up. Maybe that's a fraction that would reduce. Maybe you'd forget to do that. You know, if you just have to deal with the letters, I think it's easier. It takes away all those math errors that could have happened. If I try to solve for D instead, start would be cross multiply. AD, friend up again. CB, friend up again. If the goal is to get the D alone,
CB on top of A.
CB on top of A. Question about that one. Alternative way to do this that's a little quicker on this one. If the goal were to get the C alone, another way you could have tackled this problem, if you want to get the C alone, the only thing that has to move is the D. And if we're doing opposites, if it's on the bottom of one side, it's going to go to the top of the other side. That's maybe a quicker way to arrive at this. I don't necessarily know there's a quicker way to get the D alone. The D is more of a hassle than the C. Why is the D more of a hassle? It's on the bottom. So if you wanted to get the D alone, you'd have to go D go up, which would bump into the A, so the A would have to go down. And then the B is under a thing. We don't want it under, so we put it up top. That would be another way you could just zigzag your way to the answer. If you're comfortable with those zigzags, do it. If I lost you in the last like 60 seconds, act like I didn't say that. Memory wipe that, and just cross multiply, you'll be fine. But if you want to go zigzag, sometimes zigzag's quicker than cross multiply. Question about first two of 6, 8. Slide to the left. For this one, if I go to try to attack the B, there's not a full cross multiply to do here, although I guess you could make it B if you wrote this over 1. But if you do what you can with some cross multiply moves, who would get together?
3A.
3 and A would get together on a little bit of a mini cross multiply. And then the question is, if this is going to stand tight, are we better to distribute or not? And that's a toss-up, so we'll go two different directions. So one choice, go ahead and distribute. So if we distribute, we got 3a. Distribute makes,
EB plus DC.
yeah, BB and a DC. If the goal is to get the B alone, so we want that thing alone, we'd subtract the DC. So this side temporarily looks like 3A minus DC, and the B and the D still wait. To get B completely alone,
Put all of that.
put that whole thing on the top and D on the bottom. That would be a bad question for anybody who gets your B's and your D's reversed still. I know that's an elementary school issue with people sometimes. If that's still an issue, that was a bugger of a question, I suppose. Question about that one? I probably wouldn't have done that. Okay. Rather than distribute, which makes stuff bigger, what's another thing we could have done to the D other than to distribute it? Just divide it. So 3A would sit on top of just the D, and the B plus C would have been sitting there. The goal was to get the B alone. So where does that go relative to the fraction? Top, bottom, or away from it? Away. Just subtract C. Just around somewhere. These two answers are the same. Quick conversation, I guess, about that. Anytime you have just a single term monomial on the bottom, you can treat this like two different fractions. This could be its own fraction, which, there it is. This could be its own fraction, but in this fraction you could cancel the D's, and it showed up there. Those two answers, they look different, but they're the same answer. Question about that one? So let's go again. This would have the same start. The 3 would multiply the A. The B plus C would sit there. Maybe the D should be distributed, maybe the D shouldn't be distributed. Last time I took it both ways. Was either way easier or harder? I don't think, not really, probably. Those were probably about the same difficulty of paths. On this one, I have a firm opinion about whether to distribute or not, and I won't do it both ways. Anybody out there have an opinion whether distributing is a good idea or a lousy idea?
Lousy.
Lousy idea. Why would distributing the D be a lousy idea?
Will work.
Extra work. It's the cost of
Yeah, why is distributing the D cause definite problems?
Then they'll be together.
Well, how many would there be? 2. The goal is to get D alone. Right now, there's one of them. If you distribute the D, now there's like a bunch of them. You don't want a bunch of them, you want one of them. So distributing that would be a terrible idea. If the goal is to get the D alone, yeah, just go ahead and divide. On top, we just leave 3A, and that whole group is trying to multiply, so that whole group goes and divides, it goes to the bottom. Question about that? Slide right again. Probably need a camera move for this group, I would think, soon. This is no longer a cross-multiply world. Why is this absolutely not a cross-multiply world anymore? There's not fraction equal fraction. There's not 2 fractions, there's 3. So we have to have a process for this. It's the same process we've done multiple days recently. Where are we looking? Look at all the bottoms, pick out LCM. LCM would have A, B, and C. That's the thing that I circle it. The job of the LCM is to get rid of all the bottoms, canceling, and then whoever's left will have to multiply. So when we attack this fraction and the A goes away, it gets us BC. If the B goes away, AC. And when the C goes away, AB. The goal is to solve for B. A little bit of a hassle here. Why is this a little bit of a hassle to get after the B? There's 2 of them. So what do you do about that? subtract one of them so that they're on the same side. I'm going to leave the non-B's where they sit and do a B family reunion over here. What would be the B family reunion?
AB minus BC.
AB minus BC. Question about that. Next, we're going to do something we haven't done today, we haven't done for a while, but you've done it in your life about 1,000 times. Okay? The goal is to get the B alone. Take out a GCF. The B gets factored off. That leaves you A minus C. And then I'm running out of room, so I'll head to this direction. If we get the B completely alone,
AC over A minus C.
AC over A minus C. Something about that? Can you wait like 2 more minutes?
Yeah.
Something there? This one, cross multiply or no?
Good.
I think in those terms, because there's 2 items. So the A gets joined by
C plus D.
C plus D.
And then B, C, C.
And then the 2 and the B can just sit. Question about that? Is this more like the one a minute ago where distributing didn't really matter whether we did or didn't? Or is this like the one a minute ago that we did not want to distribute?
Doesn't matter.
Wait, well, it doesn't matter.
Do, don't, doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. 'cause
Doesn't
if I
really
just
matter.
say-
Because right now, how many C's are there? Just one. If you distribute, there's still just one. So it's not really a big deal whether you do or don't. So let's not distribute first. So if I don't distribute, and I just leave C plus D alone, what does the A need to do? Divide. What's that look like? 2B on top of A. Then if I get the C completely alone, how am I doing that? Subtract D. So this fraction is there. Where does the subtract D get shown? Beside it, not part of the fraction, just over there. About that move. If you'd rather distribute, that's fine. If you distribute it, it looks like
AC plus
AC and AD equals 2B. The AC could sit. How would you shift the AD out of it? Subtract, so 2B minus AD. To get the C completely alone, that whole thing on top, and then who's on the bottom? A. And again, these answers are the same. If you made this its own fraction, we can see it over there. If you make that its own fraction, you get an A cancellation. We can see that over there. I don't know that one is better or worse than the other. It doesn't matter. Distribute, not, who cares? Something there. Last go round for this. Cross multiply still in play?
Yep.
Yep, there's 2 items. So A gets with
D.
D, the B
C plus D.
with C plus D. I'm just going to write it as a distribute problem because like we've seen through the day, sometimes distributing is helpful, sometimes it's not. And even if we're saying it's helpful, maybe it's neutral. Like, I don't know that we've gained from distributing on some of those. So here, if we're getting after the D, is that terrible or okay if we would distribute? It's all right. I would go, on this one, I'd actually go farther than that for the first time. I'd say you have to, because since this has a D, and this has a D, we've got to get at that, because ultimately all the D's need to go on the same side. And there's no way to really do that other than distributing the D. So this is the first one. Distributing is not just like neutral or like it's like, yeah, you've got to distribute here. So AD is our friend. BC plus BD is our friend. If you get your B's and your D's reversed, my apologies. We just said a minute ago our D's have to all go same side. So I'll make this the D side. AD can get its friend by minus a BD. Left out BC. Take out a GCF again. The D has to come out, leaving us A minus B. BC still waits. And when the D gets alone in fraction form, BC up, A minus B bottom. That is our deal. Homework off of this is going to be 277. 277, one thing that they do that's like a little bit weird, they do a thing called subscripts. So instead of having X and Y maybe, they'll have like X number 1 and X number 2. You have to copy those subscripts. They don't do math, they're not like exponents. It's just a way of saying those are different. I don't know why they choose to do that sometimes, but that's up to people's own choices. Some of these equations actually mean things, like the r, the little r is the radius of something. So it's like little radius number 1 and little radius number 2, or the one equation here, it's like velocity number 1 and velocity number 2, because they have 2 different velocities in the same physics formula. But when you see these little subscripts, the subscripts just mean that they're different letters, and you have to keep track of those, just like keeping track of your B's and your G's. So that's worth a brief mention. I would say it looks just like the board. Almost everybody cross multiplies. On the board we had one of these out of like 6 that you had to do in LCM. On the homework, looks to me like there's maybe 4 out of 20 that you'll have to do in LCM, but the majority is cross multiply. Another thing to keep track of on this and on the test, capital letters are different than small letters. So if you have a big A and a little a, you have a big R and a little r, whatever the letter may be. I see one here, big E, little e. Those are different E's, so you just have to keep track of your capitalization as well. It's like 15 minutes left on a game night. It's not a bad idea to get started. Bathroom trip, yes. 277, 1 to 20 is our game. So.